I couldn't think of an opening skit for this week's episode, but maybe that's for the better. Anyways, let's get into it. So the episode starts off by reading the calling card that the Phantom Thieves sent out. It's pretty obvious that Ryuji wrote it, so maybe I should cut him some slack for this, but there are some pretty major flaws in the details. They say that it will be done tomorrow, but the effects of the calling card wear off after a day. Are they trying to confuse the Shadow Kamoshida? That's the only reason I could see this being the case. Kamoshida sees the calling card and is obviously upset, and publicly harasses the students, further condemning him, and his shadow gets angry as well. Now this is the part that I mentioned before, where it's not really clear if they can actually see it, but it seems like in the anime, they can. They actually remembered to put in their opening this time, and this is the first real opening, break in to break out. Let's analyze it as well. After some TV shenanigans and some metaverse stuff, we get a nice panorama of the main characters going by, and then it cuts to individual shots with the characters, as well as various other scenes with them. Then we get to watch Joker just stand in the middle of a train car for 10 seconds. They never post their calling cards in person, especially so obviously, as to not draw attention to their identities. I don't know why, but Sai gets way too much screen time in these openings, considering how minor of a character she is. So this is showing that Ren and Akechi are two sides of the same coin, a topic that this entry in the series brought over from the previous entry, but Akechi is on two sides of a coin with himself. This is actually a pretty nice attention to detail, but it's also a bit of a spoiler, so I won't be explaining why. Also, what's with the bare feet? We then get animations of all the team members starting out clean and then going very gritty, and end with an upwards panorama of the sky. Okay, there wasn't actually too much in that to critique. They did an overall pretty good job on this opening. Morgana recaps what should have happened in the castle after Kamoshida saw the calling card, and he does end up confirming that they can see this in the anime. It's not confirmed in the game as far as I know. Why weren't they told of this time limit earlier? And that's why their plan to do it the next day won't work. If it disappears the next morning, they wouldn't have time to do it the next day. It's pretty simple logic, you'd think they'd get that. They decide when to meet up, and whoa there, Morgana never lets Ren stay up past his bedtime. So why is he suggesting that they meet up in the middle of the night? And this whole idea of the palace ruler being even more on the lookout is never brought up again. If anything, they're just giving Kamoshida more time to prepare traps, as we'll see later. They usually go into the palace right after school, like in the game, so why is this time different? They decide to prepare before heading into the palace, so they go to Untouchables, a model gun shop. Ryuji is the one who's supposed to bring them there, so why doesn't he know why they're there? Also, wasn't Ryuji supposed to bring a gun into the palace the second time and ultimately give it to Ren? This gun costs almost 20,000 yen, but you only start out with about 10,000. There's no way you would have been able to afford that gun. Additionally, the gun is only supposed to cost about 1,400, and it isn't even the gun you start out with. Talk about an awkward social interaction, even I could have done better than that. Since they got completely ripped off by non-canon prices, they have to make do with band-aids as medical supplies, even though they should have already gotten quite a bit from the palace. Funny band-aid goes honk. Healing moves would work better than those ever would. Also, why didn't they prepare beforehand? They sure do enjoy doing everything last minute. After heading home, we're introduced to one of our confidants, Takumi, a doctor who tests experimental drugs on children. Totally doesn't sound sketchy at all. I thought that Sojiro didn't like bringing up his personal life to his customers, so how does Takumi know that Ren is staying there? Nothing about this conversation is normal. Are you legally allowed to just give a minor a drug without them having to sign something first? Ren proceeds to increase his proficiency level by making some infiltration tools. That piece of metal is going to be way too thick for a lockpick. The pins would have to be huge in order for that to be effective at all. And why is he making it now? Didn't they already make their way through the palace? Since they did, they probably wouldn't need any new infiltration tools. But I guess their logic behind it would be that the palace ruler should be able to re-lock their doors and stuff. Meanwhile, Ann goes to visit Shiho, but little does she know that Adachi from Persona 4 showed up earlier and took off her mask, leading to her death. Oh, wait, hang on. That's the wrong script. In actuality, Shiho is just fine and recovering, but hasn't regained consciousness. Alright, it's palace time. It's 1 a.m. Wouldn't the calling card's effects have expired since it's the next morning? It seems that, like I hypothesized earlier, the palace security has increased since they gave him so much time. Codenames are pretty important in Persona 5 when infiltrating palaces, and I've accidentally been calling them by their codenames already, even though they haven't been decided. Speaking of that, why are they establishing codenames now? Shouldn't they have done that when they did the infiltration last episode? I guess they would have only been able to do 2 of them since An hadn't joined the team and Joker's unique skill hasn't been revealed yet. It's just another side effect of this anime's poor plot progression and timing. Why is the door locked? In the game, you're able to unlock all the doors without a pick or key. You just have to go around. How did it open on its own? I get that this isn't the real world, but still. There's no brick climbing like this in the castle. Is he trying to deviate from the main path or something, even though they have a set infiltration route? So this was the trap that deactivated last episode that I had a slight problem with. At least it has some plot relevance this time around. In order to deactivate the trap, they have to find a special key. Hey, that kinda looks like... They lure out the guard and hit in the head, but a metal pipe wouldn't be able to expose the shadow within the guard. You'd need to take off their helmet. Ren pulls out his gun for intimidation, but why hasn't Morgana explained the real purpose of guns in this world? The key can only be obtained through defeating the guard, but I'll make an exception this time. Despite how rude the pixie was being, Ren thinks it, and the pixie has a reverse existential crisis. But really? Thank you makes them realize who they really are? Usually you have to have a full-blown conversation with them in order for that to happen. While realizing who she is, she breaks free from the CGI chains that are bringing the animation down, only to succumb to them a couple seconds later. And this is where Ren's power of the wild card comes in. Pixie turns into a mask and flies into his face. This means that Ren can use Arsene and Pixie in battle, although he never uses Pixie. Why are his eyes red? I'm pretty sure that's not very healthy. They eventually arrive at the treasure room, where the treasure has materialized into a crown. Compared to how large it was in the game, it's not really that huge. Morgana goes crazy for the treasure, but Shadow Kamoshida shows up and takes it to his throne room where he transforms into boss mode. He then proceeds to attack the Phantom Thieves with a bunch of volleyballs, so they run away to discuss tactics. So they decide to send Skull to knock Kamoshida's crown off and take away his power. And for the next while, it follows the regular boss fight pretty well. Then Ren finally discovers that his gun can shoot actual bullets, despite it being a model. Morgana then explains how that worked. Kamoshida then launches a pretty powerful volley at them, and it somehow takes out the entire team, even though it didn't hit any of them. Somehow Joker just randomly passes out and is sent to the Velvet Room, where he learns about Persona Execution and Fusion. After the execution, he gets a new persona, and it actually does correspond with the actual one he would get in-game. It doesn't appear to be CGI, but it also doesn't appear to be animated very well. Ren then goes back a couple seconds in time and summons his new persona. Why does he have golden eyes here? While he does have a new persona, he didn't exactly awaken to it, which is the only time that humans have golden eyes in the series. As I've said before, he's a protagonist in a Persona game. Of course he can use multiple personas. Ryuji then steals Kamoshida's crown, and they do an all-out attack. They could have at least synced up the song with the all-out attack, like they do with the other songs in the different scenes. I'm actually surprised that they didn't, since they seem to like doing it so much. Aside from that, the all-out attack is pretty vanilla this time around. However, it's getting to the point where none of the battles feel special. It's just, use a skill or two, then go all out. There's pretty much no variety whatsoever. At least the animation quality is slightly better this time around. Kamoshida, now defeated, tries to blow a Shiho, but is convinced not to by the Phantom Thieves. Instead, he has to return to his real self and have him admit to his crimes. The palace then starts to collapse since there isn't any reason for it to exist, but the anime really messes up the scene. Why isn't there any tense music or a runaway scene? It just makes it feel really anticlimactic. So it's a couple days later and rumors have spread about Kamoshida since he hasn't turned up to school and the whole Shiho incident, so the school decides to hold an assembly to tell the kids to calm down. But lo and behold, Kamoshida shows up and confesses to his crimes. This is pretty much the only time that this song, Tears, actually fits. It has sort of a dramatic feel with an underlying sense of sadness for part of it, but a sense of courage for the rest. Pretty much all the other times this song is used, all they talk about is an unfortunate event, with no sense of hope in the conversation at all. But I'll save that for another time. Morgana says that it was proven that if the shadow returns to their real self, then they won't have a mental shutdown. But this would have to happen multiple times in order for it to be considered a pattern. That's what a pattern is. You could have just gotten lucky this time. Ren's codename is then decided upon, Joker, since he's a wild card, although you probably already knew that since I said it so many times. But then Sojiro finds out about Morgana. Thing is, he was supposed to find out about him the first day that Ren took him home, but if you thought we were done, you'd be mistaken. Just like in episode 2, they saved the Akechi quota for the end of this episode, after the credits. But this time, in the form of an actual spoiler. The scene doesn't happen until the end of the show, so why? And do you see that in the back? That's right, Haru got screen time. I know some people who will definitely appreciate this. Maybe I shouldn't have shown them that. It's pretty much anarchy now. Well, hang on a second, guys. I'm sorry about this. Guys, you need to be quiet while I'm recording. I don't care if we're the same person. If you don't stop making so much noise, I'm not gonna spend 7 hours keyframing and masking you guys into the video, okay? Fine. You show us Haru's screen time and you expect us not to react? Also, you're replacing that vase, okay? Sorry about that, guys. I had to have a talk with my roommates. But either way, this episode's over, so I'll see you guys next time.